Welcome to the Badass Direct Sales Mastery Podcast with your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. Badass Direct Sales Mastery is a podcast for rock star direct sales moms who are determined to make their business kick ass. Jennie will share her knowledge of effective sales and recruiting techniques, tips to get what you want from your business, and will interview direct sales professionals and leaders from various companies. The interviews will give insight to how these rock stars got to where they are and where they plan to grow in the future. And now, the direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger.
Welcome back to another episode of the Badass Direct Sales Mastery Podcast. You've got me here again, your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. I wanted to do a fun episode today. For those of you who have listened from the very first welcome episode, you probably remember I teased the story of how I recruited by accident on purpose. And I said that was an episode for a future episode. Well, guess what? It's finally that future episode. For those of you who are new to the podcast and you haven't heard the welcome episode, please take a moment to go back and listen to that very first episode where I tease the story that I'm about to tell you, because you're probably going to want a little know more about me. And that's a great episode to get to know me, as well as episodes 2 and 3. So now that you're back for the story, how did I recruit by accident on purpose? I know that sounds really, really weird, but it really truly was an accidental recruiting, but it did happen on purpose. It just wasn't my purpose, my intention at the time necessarily. So the story behind this was I had been in business for about 3 months, maybe a little more than 3 months. And I was one of the top salespeople in my uplines organization at that point in time. I was doing really well with sales. I was with a party plan company. And so I was having plenty of parties as a new person. But I had hit that moment where we all run out of parties. We all have that moment, and I had finally hit it a little more than 90 days out from my business starting. And I was really starting to wonder how this was going to go, because I had committed myself to a full year in business. And here I was in the beginning of first or second quarter, and I didn't have a party. Now, what I didn't know at the time was this was also the month of January. For those of you who are in the direct sales world, especially in the party plan world, you know that the month of January is considered one of the dreaded J months. So this means that typically about 50% of parties will reschedule or cancel in the month of January, or any month that begins with J is the current belief set. So what I didn't know was I think I had, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 parties scheduled for that month, and they had all canceled or rescheduled at that point in time. And I'm sitting there going, great, now what? Well, in that, on one particular day, my upline called me and said, hey, I've got a party in your area. She and I lived about 45 minutes apart at the time. I've got a party in your area tonight, and I'm not going to be able to make it. Could you go do the party for me? And so we talked about what that meant, because this was my very first party that I had ever had dovetailed to me. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's when an upline leader gifts you a party that they have booked with a hostess that they know, and they're allowing you to go do the party, get the sales, get the bookings, etc. And so we talked about what that looked like. And she said, basically what this means is you go do the party, all the orders are yours. Anybody who books a party, that's your party, and anybody that you recruit is your first team member. Because she knew that at that point in time, I was so frustrated and confused as to why people weren't joining my team. I didn't get it. And so as soon as she said, and anybody who you recruit is yours as well, I literally laughed. Like, yeah, right. That's not going to happen, but sure. And what came out of her mouth totally changed how I approached this particular party. Because she said, well, I just want to let you know that the hostess's daughter is in her mid-20s and she's actually thinking about doing this. She's thinking about joining. So if you have a conversation with her tonight and she decides to do it, she can be your first recruit. And I went, oh, okay. Well, that sounds awesome. Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, uh, thank you. I was extremely grateful that here she was, not only giving me a party, not only giving me sales and potential future bookings, but she was also gifting me potentially my first recruit, which what I didn't know at the time was she was helping plant a seed of belief, a belief that someone in that room wanted to do what we do. And so I went into that party believing that there was someone in the room who wanted to do this. And so as I had a conversation with her throughout the course of the party, and I wasn't being pushy or salesy or anything like that, just was really getting to know her, really getting to know why she would want to do something like this, what benefits she would receive from doing something like this. And what ended up happening was I did end up recruiting that night. It just wasn't the hostess's daughter. I ended up recruiting the hostess's daughter's best friend because she was listening into that entire conversation the whole time. And what I didn't know about her when I first met her was that she was a fashion design student and I was with a jewelry company. So it makes perfect sense that a fashion design student would want to be with a jewelry company. Of course. So what was really fun was she said yes before I even left. We set up the date for her starter show. We got her set up to attend her very first training so that way she could get started on knowing how to do the business and all of that. So I onboarded her pretty much right then and there at the end of the party before we all went home. And so you can see, well, first of all, I gotta share with you, there ended up being a snowstorm that night. And what should have taken me about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes to get home took over 2 hours. And I didn't care. The whole drive home, I just was singing to myself, I gotta recruit. I gotta recruit. I was just so freaking happy that I had finally done it because I didn't even fully understand at the time how it happened. Now, looking back after having had the conversation with my upline, and she told me that she was planting the seed of belief intentionally. And in all honesty, the hostess's daughter did join my team the next month. So she had been thinking about it. It's not like my upline leader told me an untruth. It was the truth. She was thinking about it. She just wasn't ready yet. But then when her friend jumped in, she was ready to go. Right. So, that seed of belief is huge. Knowing that you have the opportunity that somebody out there wants to do this, you just have to find them, really helps. So that was the on purpose part. The accidental part was the fact that I went in there trying to recruit or looking to recruit someone who I'd been told was interested and ended up recruiting someone else by proxy, totally by accident, because my intent wasn't to recruit the person that I ended up recruiting. But it ended up working out. So what that ended up doing for me in that moment then was understanding how simple that conversation was. It also showed me that at that point in time when I looked back to figure out, okay, what did I do differently that suddenly had people interested in talking about the opportunity? Well, first of all, because I went in there believing that somebody wanted to do this, I treated the opportunity conversation much differently. Up until that particular party, I would spend probably 3 to 5 minutes talking about our customer sale. I would spend 3 to 5 minutes talking about the hostess rewards that would come from somebody deciding to book a party. And then my opportunity talk sounded exactly like this. And the best way to get our jewelry is to join my team. That took what, like 5 seconds compared to 3 to 5 minutes explaining the customer sale and how they could get the most bling for their buck. and 3 to 5 minutes explaining hostess rewards. So of course I was selling and booking, but then the recruiting conversation was 5 seconds as opposed to 5 minutes. Understand the difference there? So once I shifted, because when I went into that party believing somebody wanted to do it, I then made sure that I talked about the opportunity and the benefits it had brought to me for about 3 to 5 minutes, and ended up getting people asking me questions. And that was the beginning part of how I started recruiting and sponsoring. And now let me tell you, the idea of sponsoring and recruiting is a much larger concept, much larger training. But I think what I really want you to take away from this is that, number one, if you go into any conversation with the belief that someone wants to do it, you just have to find the right people, that changes how you approach the conversation. Secondly, if you're talking about the opportunity because you believe that there are people out there, you just have to find the right people, you are having the conversation more often than you would have otherwise. So that also improves your chances of recruiting or sponsoring. So I hope telling you my story of how I recruited accidentally on purpose is an eye-opener for you and begins to help you make that shift and that switch in order to begin to build, to grow your team. Or if you've already started building and growing and now you're able to take this and really tweak what you're doing to improve those conversations because of your changed mindset from this, please, I'd love to hear about it. Please reach out to me on Facebook. You can find me, Jennie Bellinger, on Facebook, to be able to let me know if this episode or how this episode changes your view of sponsoring or recruiting for your own business. Thanks again for listening, and stay tuned for the next badass episode.
Thanks for listening to the Badass Direct Sales Mastery Podcast with your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. Why are you waiting to go to badassdirectsalesmastery.com? Don't make the dom get her whip. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with another rock star that you know in direct sales after you subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. You can also check out the show notes for links and any contact information mentioned in today's episode. We'll see you next time.